Last time we saw President Saddam Hussein was on television tonight in video that we know was at least a day old from a tour that he made of Kuwait. Excuse me. I'm now looking out the window of our bureau here, and I can tell you that off in the distance there continues to be the sounds of what appear to me to be bombs. During the president's message, there were flashes of light from a distance probably as much as 15 or 20 miles away, probably to the south of where we are. And at this moment, there are no signs of anti-aircraft fire in the downtown Baghdad area, but there continue to be these flashes of light off in the distance to the south. Peter Arnett, your reflections.
Yes, John, I couldn't help thinking as I heard the bombs, the distant bombs, punctuating President Bush's speech of his reference to Vietnam. This will not be another Vietnam. And I was thinking back to Vietnam, where I spent many years, to a similar raid in 1972, a B-52 strike on Hanoi. The interesting thing was that raid came at the end of the Vietnam War, near the end of the Vietnam War, and many say it helped end that war. This raid on Baghdad and elsewhere in this region tonight is at the beginning of this war, and maybe it certainly won't be a Vietnam. John?
Peter, while you were speaking, the sky lit up again with some more apparently chaff to fool Iraqi radar in the sky. There are bunches of groups of white lights and yellow lights that go through the sky and then blink out mysteriously, apparently designed to confuse the anti-aircraft guns. And at this point, the anti-aircraft guns are not firing, so if they're intended to confuse, they are not. The guns are not firing. Well, as I speak, off in the distance, I see some anti-aircraft fire is going up pretty far away from our location, and you might be able in the background to hear some of that out the window. Yeah, Bernie Shaw is back again, and then we want to talk to someone who's just come up from the shelters downstairs who will brief our loved ones about how things are there. Bernie.
Yes, I was just, Ingrid has been sitting here on the floor. I don't know how you managed to get past those guards and make that long hike up those 14 stories that I made about an hour ago. But what is the situation in the bomb shelter? And Ingrid, you know all of the members of the press corps, the other American networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, they've been highly concerned about their people. So take your time now and give us a fill on what the situation is in the bomb shelter.
Well, what you can see from up here, you can hear down in the shelter is low, very low and quiet thumps. There was a little bit of confusion at the beginning. The press went down there, other hotel guests, hotel employees who also live in a compound nearby. A number of mothers and their children at a certain time, perhaps half an hour after the attack started, you heard chants of down, down Bush, so we even had a little demonstration down in the shelter. The interesting thing was that some of the government guides that accompany us during the day when we try and work, and some of the hotel security people are walking around with Kalashnikovs and gas masks, which is something that was a little bit of a surprise to see. And I did see a lot of our colleagues down there, some of them who had been up on higher floors taking pictures, and they were taken by security people downstairs to a shelter, ostensibly for our own protection. Bernie?
And what is the mood of the people in the shelter?
Well, it's actually quieted down a lot. The confusion has ceased. Some of the people have gone to sleep. There's still a lot of milling around. The people are trying to get the BBC or anything to know what's going on in the outside world. There's a lot of questions about what's going on in Kuwait, Jordan, Israel, other spots that may be involved, and people are very curious to come above ground, waiting for daylight just to see what has happened.
Even in the midst of these raids around Baghdad, life goes on, and as incredible as it sounded incredible to my ears, John Holloman, a rooster crowing about 20 minutes ago as the bombs were going off out there over the horizon. Very strange sound.
I'll say, Bernie, and it's a long time before sunrise here. It's still a couple of hours before we're going to see the first rays of sunlight off to the east. But this rooster was obviously confused by all the military hardware arrayed and displayed in the skies of Baghdad. Peter Arnett standing by to talk to us some more, but I'm just going to look out the window once before I give the microphone to Peter. You can still see flashes in the sky, but still, strangely, eerily, there are no fires, which is an indication. President Bush said in his speech that they were not attacking civilian targets here. They were attacking specific military targets, and it appears that's correct from everything we can observe from our window.
Yes, thank you, John. By my watch in this dim light of this hotel room, these series of raids have been going on for about 2 hours and 50 minutes. They began at around 2:30 Baghdad time in the center of the city. The government installations or installations of one kind or another, maybe anti-aircraft, strategic communication centers, began in the center and stayed in this particular part of town for about an hour and a half, but they are moving outwards of a large perimeter. All around the horizon, we see explosions. There must have been scores and scores of raids that we have witnessed so far. Witnessed, when I say we witnessed, we've seen the flashes and we have seen the anti-aircraft fire going up. But it's obvious that these raids are continuing, and we can see the evidence of that. Here's Bernie Shore again.
Peter, I'm trying to clear my mind of everything to keep the chronology of events uppermost. And I am anticipating two things at daybreak. One is more a hope than an anticipation. We hope that, one, when it's safe to go outside, we can find somebody in authority in this government to talk to. We do not know where President Saddam Hussein is at this moment as these raids continue. The other thing I anticipate is that Saddam Hussein will be beseeched by friends, some of them, to quit Kuwait. And of course you have to assume that he's going to have his supporters who will say, fight on. But I can't wait for daybreak because we've got even more work to do, and it's going to be interesting to see whether we can find anybody responsible in this government here in Baghdad to respond not only to the attacks, but also to the address of the President of the United States. Peter?
Yes, indeed, Bernie. Now, President Saddam Hussein has made it clear in the past week that he almost welcomed this war and he was prepared to fight it. So as we see it continuing, we'll report back to Atlanta, but let me give you John Holloman first.
Now we're going to go back to Atlanta to see what else our other network correspondents have to tell us.
John, Peter.
This morning at 0300 Saudi time, we launched Operation Desert Storm, an offensive campaign that will enforce the UN resolutions. And this is directed to the troops, all the troops, especially the U.S. troops. During my visits with you, I have seen in your eyes a fire of determination to get this job done quickly so we all may return to the shores of our great nation. My confidence in you is total. Our cause is just. Now you must be the thunder and lightning of Desert Storm. May God be with you. Signed, General H. Norman Schwarzkopf, Commander-in-Chief, U.S. Central Command. The indications we're getting so far are that the operation to this early date is working fairly well. David?
Well, tonight we know why they call him Stormin' Norman. Thank you for that. We've just been in the heartland.
By now, Eastern Time, 3 o'clock Thursday morning in the Gulf, the armed forces of the United States began an operation at the direction of the President to force Saddam Hussein to withdraw his troops from Kuwait and to end his occupation of that country. At the direction of the President, I signed the execute order yesterday afternoon to undertake this operation, subject to certain conditions. It was to begin only after we'd met the terms of the resolution passed last Saturday by the Congress. Those conditions have been complied with and proper notice has been given as required. And the operation was not to take place if there had been any last-minute diplomatic breakthroughs. The operation underway tonight, taking place in the pre-dawn darkness of the Persian Gulf, involves allied air forces of 4 nations: the United States, the United Kingdom, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait. As they undertake their missions, they do so after months of careful planning. At the direction of the President, great care has been taken to focus on military targets, to minimize U.S. casualties, and to do everything possible to avoid injury to civilians in Iraq and Kuwait. The targets being struck tonight are located throughout Iraq and Kuwait. Our focus is on the destruction of Saddam Hussein's offensive military capabilities, the very capabilities that he used to seize control of Kuwait and that make him a continuing threat to the nations of the Middle East. These are the same capabilities that now threaten American and allied forces in the Gulf. Our goal, the same one we have maintained throughout Operation Desert Shield, is to liberate Kuwait and enforce the resolutions of the UN Security Council. This portion of the campaign, directed against Saddam Hussein's offensive military force, is an enormously complex undertaking. It involves all of the services of the United States military and hundreds of U.S. and allied aircraft. It is an ongoing operation. and we must therefore limit the kind and the amount of information that we provide in these early stages. This obviously is different from what happened in Panama in December of 1989, where most of the operation was over by the morning of the first day. We understand your need for information about what will happen next, and we are well aware of our obligation to keep the American people informed. But you must also understand that we cannot talk about future operations without putting at risk the safety of those who will have to carry them out. I believe I can speak for all of us at the Pentagon tonight when I say that we had hoped to settle this matter peacefully. This has clearly been an agonizing decision for the President and the Congress of the United States. And we've reached the point of committing our forces to battle very reluctantly, only after the most careful consideration. But no one should doubt our ability and our resolve to carry out our mission and to achieve our objective. I have great confidence in the professionalism, the dedication, and the determination of the men and women of our armed forces. They are, without question, the finest young sailors, soldiers, airmen, and Marines this nation has ever sent in harm's way. I want to assure all Americans that we will do our very best to carry out the President's orders as quickly and efficiently as possible and at the lowest cost possible. We'd be happy to respond to a few questions.
General Powell, can you describe the Iraqi Air Force's resistance, if any, their losses so far, and to what extent do you think that you've already achieved air superiority there?
Well, the operation's only 2.5 hours old, so I'm not quite prepared to take on your second question. So far, there has been no air resistance.
Can you tell us if there's been any casualties so far?
We will, at the appropriate time, be releasing information on casualties. We're not prepared to release any specifics now. I will simply say that the preliminary reports we have received in terms of the success of the operation, and that includes the possibility of casualties, have been very, very encouraging. The operation appears to have gone very well.
What can you tell us about the Scud missiles that have been reportedly launched by Iraq?
There have been a number of reports of Scud missiles, but insofar as I am aware, they basically are false reports. General Powell, I want to say
Give us
nothing.
a rundown on the types of aircrafts and numbers that were involved in the raids.
I really can't at this time because it is an ongoing operation. Let me just say that it involved the Air Forces mentioned by Secretary Cheney and sorties in the hundreds.
Can you tell us were there cruise missiles involved with that?
I won't comment on specific weaponry. It's an ongoing operation.
What targets were we bombing near Baghdad, and have we bombed any facilities where we think Saddam Hussein might be?
We have not been targeting Mr. Saddam Hussein. The purpose of our bombing facilities in the area of Baghdad is essentially to go after the command and control system of the Iraqi armed forces, and we're looking at principally military targets, command and control installations, air defense sites that could put our planes at risk, but they are militarily oriented targets.
Have you targeted any Iraq response of any kind?
The response of the Iraqi forces at this point has been limited, I think would be the best way to characterize it. But again, let me emphasize, as General Powell did, we are in the very early stages of this operation. It is likely to run for a long period of time. I realize you've all got legitimate questions about it, but there simply are things we do not know yet because it is an ongoing operation, because pilots are just now returning, and there will be a lot of work required to assess the success of the initial efforts, and there will be a lot of follow-up work required as well.
Could you tell us, please, whether or not there have been any indications whatsoever that the Iraqi troops, the 540,000 Iraqi troops in the Kuwaiti theater, have been cut off from their command and control headquarters in Baghdad?
I wouldn't want to speculate on that at this point, Wolf.
What about, Mr. Secretary, can I follow up, please? Should I follow up? The President said this was strictly an air operation for the time being. When does the U.S. decide to send in the ground forces?
It is strictly an air operation for the time being, and I wouldn't want to speculate on the point at which additional forces might be engaged.
Have your targets tonight with any Navy
planes? Murat said on the McNeil Air News Hour this evening that we are, quote, now prisoners of our own country, in our own country. Now that we've defended ourselves from naked aggression in the Middle East, how do we defend ourselves here at home from terrorist attacks?
I'm confident that we can deal with the terrorist threat.
Have our targets thus far included tanks and artillery?
I don't want to get into specific target sets yet. As the information comes in and builds over time, and we can give it to you historically, we will give it out, but I'm not prepared to go into specific target sets and what targets have been hit and have not, because it really is just too early to give you that kind of bomb damage assessment.
If Saddam Hussein says tomorrow, I give up, I'm sorry, I will withdraw from Kuwait, will you have a pause in your air campaign, or will you continue with it until you knock out all the priority targets?
I will do whatever the President of the United States directs us to do through the Secretary of Defense.
Secretary Cheney, from a military perspective, what went into your thinking in deciding to launch the attack at this point this evening? What were the factors?
Well, I think there were several factors. Of course, the President made the basic decision to commit the force. It was affected by, among other things, the expiration of the United Nations deadline that had been set on November 30th when the Security Council voted for the use of any means necessary to get him out. I think it was affected in part as a result of consultation with our allies, but it also was based upon the advice of our senior military commanders in terms of picking a time when conditions appeared to be most favorable for undertaking the operation. Let me emphasize, though, that the procedure we went through was to plan for execution of the operation at a point after the expiration of the United Nations deadline, but I had no authority to execute the plan until the President instructed me yesterday afternoon to do so, and it was at that point that we signed out the execute order with the qualifiers I mentioned in my opening statement.
Those favorable factors, can you tell us what some of those were?
I think I just leave it where it is.
Are you surprised that there was no response, or a very small response from the Iraqi forces at this point?
Again, I'm reluctant to characterize the response beyond what we've already said about it. We've not had an opportunity to debrief our pilots yet. Some of them are still flying missions, and I think it would be inappropriate at this point to convey the notion that somehow we've got a final fix on it. But I think it would be fair to say, and General Powell may well want to comment on this, that the initial reaction from the Iraqis is such that I'm generally of the opinion that we achieved a fairly high degree of tactical surprise.
Has there been U.S. Israel or Turkey on the part of Iraq?
None to my knowledge.
Mr. Secretary, could you tell us, the President mentioned that one of the objectives was to take out chemical and nuclear sites. Can you tell us in a general way if that mission was accomplished?
I can say that we have, in fact, gone after those targets. I do not yet have information on the effectiveness of those efforts.
Mr. Secretary, what about word of casualties at Baghdad? You indicated you wanted to spare civilians there. Do you have any sense about how that may or may not have occurred in the city? There was a lot of bombing, obviously, in Baghdad.
The best reporting that I've seen on what transpired in Baghdad was on CNN. And it would appear, based upon the comments that were coming in from the CNN crew in the hotel in Baghdad, that the operation was successful in striking targets with a high degree of precision. At least that's the reporting according to CNN.
Was there an Iraqi attempt? To launch missiles, sir?
Do you have any?
We've had reports of missile launches, but none of them have been confirmed.
What about the Scuds in western Iraq at those air bases on the border? Have you got any reading on that? Are those fairly high priority targets?
Yes, they are a fairly high priority target.
And how'd you do?
I'm not prepared to say how we did or what we've done so far.
A follow-up on this. At the end of this operation, this phase of the operation, when you get a little better picture, and could you come back or have one of your staff come back and give us a briefing?
You'll be getting regular briefings, and we'll be, as the Secretary said, we're going to be as forthcoming as we possibly can, while at the same time preserving operational security.
Are you confident that your targeting of command and control sites has left Saddam Hussein the ability to, number one, know what's happening to his forces, and number two, to communicate to you that he wants to quit if he does decide so?
Again, Melissa, I don't have any information at this point on the overall effectiveness of the operation. What I said was the preliminary reports are very positive, but we are in the very earliest stages of this, and therefore there's not a lot of detailed information we can give you on what the effect of the bombing campaign has been on specific strategic categories of targets.
Is there a Navy aircraft participate?
Pardon?
Is there a military commander like Saddam Hussein still alive to surrender if there is such a decision?
I really don't have anything I can give you on that.
Did you know where Saddam was? Did you know where Saddam was when the attacks began, and was that a target even though he was not the target?
We have not been tracking Mr. Saddam Hussein for the purpose of targeting him.
General, can you characterize in any general way how long the current beginning phase of this operation will continue? That is, the air operation will be the rest of I guess, tonight and tomorrow morning, or throughout tomorrow? Give people any kind of general idea how long this first phase will...
The air part of the campaign will continue until the whole campaign is completed. It doesn't end.
Do you believe the threat of a missile attack by the Iraqis has been eliminated at this point?
I cannot answer that at this time until we get some assessments in.
Any damage to any oil facilities at all?
I don't have bomb damage assessment yet. I can't answer that question.
General, how massive is this first wave? Are we talking 500 missions, 1,000 missions tonight?
I think tomorrow we'll be in a better position to try to give you a handle on that, but this early in the operation, I'm reluctant to give those numbers out until I've had a chance to talk to General Schwarzkopf in greater detail.
General Powell, when you say hundreds of sorties...
All U.S. services were involved in this part of the campaign.
When you say, General Powell, that there were hundreds of sorties, does that mean that there were not more than 1,000?
I think I'll leave it at that, between a bread box or something else. Hundreds of sorties. Thank you all. Thank you.
Apologize for screaming at anybody at headquarters in Atlanta, but I wanted to get your attention. And then the network came up to us, came to Baghdad, and we sought to describe what we were seeing, hearing, and feeling. And then I rushed down to the bomb shelter to make certain that I knew where it was. And when I was worried down there, wondering, does the world know what's going on? And I'm told that indeed the world did know what was going on because they could hear the reports. We're composed and organized now as much as you can be when a city is under attack or certain targets are under attack. And right now, there's this eerie stillness in Baghdad. John?
Also, Bernie, we should let our viewers know that we're in the dark pretty much. The hotel has no electricity. The way we were able to speak to you is we have some battery-powered equipment. Luckily, it'll work if you plug it into the wall and plug it into a battery, and it's now plugged into batteries, which we're able to scramble and find in the dark. And we think our batteries will last a while longer, so we'll be able to continue this report. And it's possible, I suppose, that by sunup, the officials in Baghdad might turn the lights back on, so we might be able to recharge our batteries and go out on the streets and do the job that we came here to do, which is show you the pictures of this place.
We do not know where President Saddam Hussein is, nor do we know the whereabouts of his key advisors. We are hoping sometime later today to hear from the government, to hear what they're saying, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what their reaction is to the series of bombing raids on strategic targets during the night. Let me pause for a moment to see whether our colleagues want to go elsewhere with our continuing coverage of what's happening in the Gulf.
We'll be back with you. At this point, let's go to Lou now. Lou?
And I'm going to check it right over to the White House where Charles Bierbauer is standing by.
President Bush has told us repeatedly that he did not think Saddam Hussein was getting the message about what was a raid against.
All of them really right on the banks of the river. Now, this is a fairly open part of Baghdad. You have to go all the way to the left off your screen there to go out to the ring of anti-aircraft missile defenses and the international airport, which the Air Force would have targeted this evening. On the right-hand side of the river there, downtown Baghdad is extremely densely populated. It's where the old city is, it's where the souk, the main markets are, and where a large percentage of the population are. Now, if you look at it from a satellite, we'll just add one more point for the second, which is that if this attack occurred as it did, before office hours, those government buildings on the west side, those which were targets, would have not had civilians in them. Again, all in the nature of speculative reporting at this point, but joining us is the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, Les Aspin, who's had a good deal to say about the military campaign. Do you think what we're saying is making any sense, sir?
Yes, I think it is. I think that this plan...
Bernie Shaw, can you hear it? Atlanta calling, Baghdad.
Hello.
You're on
Hello,
the...
Lou. I'm here now. I was
under the
touching
table.
the wrong piece of equipment. The deep glow of night becoming dawn is unfolding over the skies of Baghdad, and it is quiet. An occasional vehicle is going by, and we heard the first siren of a fire engine going somewhere. We cannot see... Well, I'm hearing some more reports now of an anti-aircraft battery or perhaps an explosion. But right now it is eerily quiet here in Baghdad. We have the pleasure of being able to sit in a chair for a change. For the last few hours, we have been on our stomachs and on our knees and on our hands moving about as we sought to observe and to report to you. We're well. All of us are, of course, exhausted. Our energy levels are way off the register, and that's the way it feels right now. Let me be quiet to listen for a question from you, and also tell you that Peter Arnett and John Holloman are here, and each will have something to say very shortly.
Yes, Bernie, it's near daylight now. Are you able to see any of the damage caused by what the Pentagon is telling us were strategic and pinpoint bombings?
Well, I can certainly vouch for that, and Peter Arnett will be able to stitch together some images in just a second. How does it feel to be at ground zero when a massive aerial campaign, unprecedented in military history, is unfolding around you? The only thing I can think of is that it's comparable to being at Cape Kennedy and feeling the ground rumble, the thunder, and seeing that huge shuttle with its booster rockets taking off and hearing the thunder. Only in this instance, in reality, here in Baghdad, you heard it sporadically. Bright lights. It was quite an experience to feel it, to see it, to think about it, to think about what it means and why it was happening, and, of course, to report it. I'm going to yield here now to Peter Arnett and John Holloman.
Yes, Peter.
Hello, Lou. Peter Arnett here.
Hi.
Just a small observation. It has to be pretty unique in journalistic history to have a front row seat to one of the great air bombardments of history. I'd just like to point out that these are just the first shots in this war, and there are no indications yet, we may have them later in the day, how Saddam Hussein feels about it, but he has a 1 million-man strong army. He said he will fight on with the cry, Allahu Akbar, God is great. And these are the first shots, and I'm, from this vantage point in Baghdad, we'll be interested to see how these events unfold from here. I'd like to hand you to John Holloman now.
Lou, what I'm going to do for you is look out the window and tell you what I see. It's something I do pretty well. I'll tell you, about 3 hours ago, the sky was brightly lighted with the tracer rounds from the anti-aircraft guns. Right now, the early morning fog that has inhabited Baghdad each early morning for the past several days is beginning to roll back in. But out on the 8-lane highway, which runs in front of our hotel, there are signs of early morning traffic. We've reported to you for many months that the society in Iraq is very well organized, and despite the fact that there was a major air attack here just a few hours ago, the morning commuter buses that are supposed to take off and drive down to the downtown bus station at this hour are on the road, and they're driving down to the bus station. As Bernie reported, we saw a hook and ladder fire truck go by, I guess about 10 or 15 minutes ago. We've also heard some small arms fire out the window in the past few minutes, but no sign of the conflagration in the skies that we reported to you on a few hours back. Downtown Baghdad really looks pretty calm right now, and the events of 3 hours ago seem to fade into memory. Bernie?
Thanks, John. We have a brother of the profession here, Don Kirk of USA Today, and this is our first eyewitness account from somebody who was outside where we've been reporting from. Don, how did you manage to make it back from the American Embassy to here?
I just drove back in the same taxi that took me to the embassy. He hadn't gotten his fare yet, so he wanted to get a full fare, so he took me back through darkened streets. There was tracer fire all over the sky on both sides of the river, but the streets were dark and calm and somewhat eerie, and there was no sign of bombing or bomb damage in the center of the city through which I drove, which doesn't mean to say that something didn't fall while I was still at the embassy. The reason I was at the American Embassy, incidentally, was that I had an open phone line to USA Today when the anti-aircraft fire began going off. I called them once more, and the line went down moments later, leaving me with no way to communicate. I came back here, and the first thing that happened to me was that they put me in the bomb shelter along with a whole lot of other journalists who were stuck down there. I managed to sort of exfiltrate my way out and up to where I am now through a back stairs.
As you were driving back in your taxi, Don Kirk of USA Today, what were you able to see on the streets in terms of people?
There were no people on the streets. There were some cars on the streets. My driver wanted to drive with his lights out, running the risk of a rather serious accident. I persuaded him to put his dim lights on from time to time. We passed some other cars, some with dim lights on, some totally dark. There were no people on the streets, and incidentally, there were no signs of military on the streets. I did see some police cars go roaring by, and a couple of taxis madly dashing through the night, but that was about it.
Don, any signs of damage from this attack anywhere between here and the U.S. Embassy?
I didn't see a single sign of damage, and I might add that I went a route that took me by the presidential palace. Now, for all I know, the palace was not even there when I went by it, but the place was totally dark and silent as I went by. From the embassy, there was AAA anti-aircraft artillery going off around the embassy and around the palace very heavily with tracer bullets of differing colors all over the place. I heard a couple of thunderous explosions, which I guess you guys heard too, which was...
We not only heard them, we felt them. Defense Secretary Dick Cheney has confirmed that they were going after strategic targets and such things as command control centers, anti-aircraft batteries. The intention, according to the Pentagon, was to blind Saddam Hussein and to cut him off from being able to communicate with his troops to the south of here.
Well, certainly there's no communication. There's no local telephone at this point. You can't even call another room where we are, and there's no communication overseas. Telexes are out, phones are out, and this means here is about the only one that I know, which is one reason why I happen to join you here.
Well, it's good to have you, brother. We're glad you're safe, and if the people at USA Today are listening, he looks quite safe to me, just a little bit winded. You have to go 14 stories high to get up here to the CNN broadcast position. Let me pause for a moment just in case our colleagues along the way have something to ask us or if they want to go somewhere else.
No, nothing here, Bernie. We're fascinated by what you have to say there.
Okay, we will... is that switch correct, John? I think we will continue here as a very satisfied Don Kirk makes his way out of our place. John, we're going to be able to see a little bit better here now very, very shortly. That's encouraging.
That's right, Bernie. Don Kirk, as you just pointed out, didn't see any signs of damage. And if what Secretary Cheney wanted the Pentagon to do was what it did and do surgical bombing, then perhaps we won't see much damage to the infrastructure here in downtown Baghdad. We can begin to see out to the horizon now, and you can see more and more cars with their lights on as we go along here.
I just have a reaction, a comment to make to what you were saying about Defense Secretary Cheney and surgical. Very simply put, if this was surgical bombing, I don't like being this close to the operating table.
Bernie, good thought. I'll tell you, I can just describe what I see on the streets to you. Again, there's a large truck, not an 18-wheeler, but looks like the kind of truck you'd rent in the United States to move some things from one place to another. It's going down the street. There's some sort of fire of some kind that we just heard out the window. It sounded like large caliber weapons fire, but we don't see any sign of it because out here the fog gets thicker and thicker. Bernie?
One observation. When we first came up on the air and we were reporting the first seconds of the attack, the first raid coming in, we heard a lot of small arms fire around the streets. And as we have been reporting throughout the night, as the F-15s, 16s came in, you don't see them, you hear them. You hear them after they are gone. And imagine, if you will, a plane swooping in low, going toward its target, and then passing you by, going so fast, and then seeing tracers from the anti-aircraft batteries. There was no match, but apparently the civilian militias and these young boys, 15 and older, who were issued these Soviet machine guns and hand weapons, they were just firing into the air as they realized the battle was on.
Yeah, there were some reports, Bernie, you'll remember a couple of months ago, that said one of the Iraqi defensive strategies was to have everybody with a weapon pointed straight up if there were an air attack, and that might have been what we were seeing, or at least hearing some evidence of a few hours ago. It feels better here. It feels a little more comfortable, a lot more comfortable, in fact, than it did when we were lying on the floor and feeling these blasts.
I think I've been awake for, what, about 30 hours? How long have you been awake?
At least that long, a long time, Bernie, and the adrenaline's beginning to go down. You know, that rush after rush after rush is kind of working its way out of our bodies. I think both of us look almost like zombies, but...
Well, we feel like zombies, let's just hope that our minds will continue to serve us, and our senses and our abilities to continue reporting to the world what it is we are experiencing and seeing here. I just hope, I've said it once before, I just hope that as morning unfolds, we'll be able to find and talk with and listen to some responsible officials from Saddam Hussein's government. Right now, everybody continues to hunker down. Let me turn the switch off to see whether Lou has something for us.
All right, I will do that, Bernie. And I'll tell you one more thing, Lou, before we do that. We made a great deal of videotape. I mean, there's going to be some fascinating pictures which we took out the windows of our hotel. The Iraqi officials came up after the attack, confiscated them. We hope they will give them back. They said they'd give them back to us after daylight, and we'll just see if we can show those to you later in the day. Lou?
All right, gentlemen, you're sounding tired. Take a little rest. We'll be back to you.
This is going to be a piece of cake. We really want to cripple their eyes and ears just as soon as possible, their command and control.
With computers in the cockpits, sophisticated radar and navigational equipment, today's fighters strike more targets, more accurately, and cover a wider area than anyone would have dreamed possible in World War II or Vietnam. Bombing runs in World War II were not very accurate. Hundreds of planes on each mission dropped bombs and did not always destroy targets. If they had had F-111s back then, 8 of them could have pulled off many of the same missions and destroyed targets with certainty. Even in the early days of Vietnam, jets lacked sophistication.
Everything was being done eyeball. I had to put that aircraft in the proper dive angle, at the proper speed, at the proper angle of attack, and release the bomb at the proper altitude above the target. And I had to do that all myself.
In Vietnam, fighters could not fight and fly effectively at night. Today, they can. With the aid of AWACS planes serving as mid-air air traffic controllers, the U.S. has tremendous capability. The military still worries about its communications being jammed by the Iraqis, which could cause mid-air collisions and missed targets. But overall, strategists have confidence in U.S. air superiority and know success in the air will save the lives of many soldiers on the ground. Larry Lamont, CNN, reporting.
This is CNN, a network of Turner Broadcasting System.
Planes are pounding targets possibly 15 to 20 miles south of here. Bernie?
Well, of course we should label our
strategic targets in Iraq. For the latest on what's happening at this hour, let's check in with CNN's Bernard Shaw, who's on the phone with us right now from Baghdad. Bernie?
Patrick, it is all over for now. It is daybreak here, and the city is trying to come awake. People are coming out of wherever they were hiding in shelter. Some people are dazed. Some people are walking slowly. We can report to you that the hotel has permitted the people who ran downstairs to the bomb shelter to come out. So all of our colleagues are walking around, stretching their legs, and running around asking one another for the latest information. What did you see? What did you hear? And all of us here at CNN have been briefing people who come up and ask us for information. We've told them about the president's address during the night. We've told them about the Pentagon's assessment of the raids, and we've told them all that. But right now, there is very little life in the streets. The traffic volume is very low. Remember, this is still a weekday, and that basically is it. We do not know where Saddam Hussein is. We do not know where the government officials are. We're hoping to learn something as soon as we can. It has been a long night for us. It has been a night none of us will ever forget, and that's the latest.
Bernie, as you look out the window, can you see any destruction as you and your colleagues Peter Arnett and John Holloman so vividly described for millions of people around the world what was actually happening as the bombing took place in Baghdad and the outskirts of Baghdad? As you look out now, do you see any destruction whatsoever?
No, Patrick, we do not see any destruction, and one of the reasons why we do not is that, as the United States government indicated, these bombing raids were meant to be very, very precise. In his address to the world, President Bush indicated that every effort was being made to hold down casualties, and that the planes coming in would be going at predetermined targets. And John Holloman, are you here? Well, John has stepped away to the other room. So to answer your question with finality, we cannot see damage. We heard one fire engine, and most of the targets were somewhat away from us.
Bernie, let me just read something off of the wire here. Obviously, I'm sure you don't have it in front of you. This is according to Reuters out of Nicosia, monitoring a Radio Baghdad report. Quoting here, war started today. Baghdad radio said on Thursday, quoting still, "We will teach America and its allies a lesson." That's what a radio announcer said on Radio Baghdad, according to Reuters. Have you heard anything about any government response whatsoever at this point?
None whatsoever, and that is why I am so anxious for us to be able to function beyond where we are now, and we're going to be seeing that. As I said a short while ago, I would imagine that right now the Revolutionary Command Council is engaging itself in assessing what has happened not only around and in Baghdad, but throughout the whole of Iraq. But we're just going to have to wait here until we can have access to government officials. Again, I say, we do not know the whereabouts of President Saddam Hussein. John Holloman is here. John?
Bernie, I was just able to look at the other side of our hotel because I noticed Patrick was asking for signs of damage in downtown Baghdad. Don't see any there. The same anti-aircraft battery that we've talked about since we've been here is still there, and there's a bunch of soldiers up on the roof with it this morning, as they have been every morning for the past 2 months. And as we look out on the streets and listen to the streets, we held our microphone out this window. You'll remember, Bernie, at your suggestion, in the middle of the battle, and we were hearing all these loud booms and things. What you hear now is the sound of early morning traffic. There's an electrical generator that somebody brought in here, a small portable one, that there's still no power anywhere in Baghdad. There are no lights on anywhere at this moment. A couple of buses taking commuters to work. There's some birds flying around over the war memorial here. There's Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, the Iraqi version of our Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And on the streets, there's still a little stillness. We still see broadcasting transmission towers off in the distance. It appears through the fog that the main telephone company may still be okay. And we don't see any signs of destruction in town. Bertie, it's remarkable to me that as powerful as some of those blasts that we felt. I know I was standing right here, and a blast hit me that felt like the blast from the space shuttle when it takes off.
That is what it reminded me of. You know, when you're down at Cape Canaveral and that shuttle goes up, the ground literally shakes and rumbles, and it's just controlled thunder. I know the report that you're referring to, that big bomb that went off, and as soon as that happened, I went right for the hallway, right? The hallway, because I was coming between rooms, and I just went right to the floor, and I was hoping that it wouldn't be nearby.
Catastrophe, yeah. We were very lucky, I think, that it wasn't a catastrophe, but you know, for us on the ground here, we can't tell you in Atlanta or anywhere else in the CNN network how powerful these bombs were as far as what size they were. We can just tell you about the effects as we felt them here. And that one blast, although it wasn't close enough to do any damage that we can see right now, certainly was powerful enough to shake us up in our hotel room.
So, John, I think our words are inadequate to describe what has happened over the past several hours during the night. You had to be here, but I realize few of you would want to be here. I don't. Before we go back to Patrick, there is one sound I will never get out of my mind from this experience.
What's that, Bernie?
That was hearing this rooster down there somewhere off the grounds of this location. Hearing that rooster crowing, it's still pitch black, and the bombs are falling.
That was an amazing, you know, they say that Baghdad is always a surreal place to live and work, and that was just one more sign of that nature of this city.
And Patrick, as John Holloman, Peter Arnett, and I come back to you, you know, they say all roads lead to Baghdad. During the night, it seemed that all aircraft led to Baghdad. Back to you.
Absolutely.
Bernie Shaw, John Holloman, and Peter Arnett, thank you very much for that remarkable reporting throughout the night, and we will be checking in with you, of course, for the very latest throughout the day here. Right now, let's go to the Pentagon, where CNN's Pentagon correspondent Wolf Blitzer has been stationed all night, and he has some information about the possible destruction of the Iraqi Air Force. Wolf?
Patrick, all night we've been getting reports, very positive reports from the U.S. standpoint, that the airstrike was massive, was devastating, and indeed those reports appear to be very, very impressive as far as the United States is concerned. Iraq's air bases, and there are probably about 100 Iraqi air bases, almost all of them appear to have been destroyed, according to Pentagon officials, who tell CNN that those air bases were pinpointed by the F-15s, the F-16s, A-6 carrier-based aircraft that came into Saudi Arabia, landed at forward bases, and then took off and returned to those bases in Saudi Arabia. The Iraqi Air Force, except for a few notable exceptions, didn't even come up to challenge the invading U.S. fighters. It was an extremely impressive U.S. airstrike. I'm sure military planners and military strategic thinkers for years to come will view this airstrike and study it at war colleges and elsewhere. In addition, we are told that all of Iraq's chemical and nuclear plants, facilities throughout the country, almost all of them appear to have been destroyed, as well as the Scud missiles. Certainly, according to Pentagon officials who tell CNN that the fixed Scud ballistic sites, not only the regular Soviet-made ground-to-ground Scud missiles, but also the improved longer-range, what the Iraqis call the El Hussein and the El Abbas, those fixed sites appear to have been destroyed before those missiles could even take off and go after targets. Certainly in the western part of Iraq, the Israelis were always very nervous about what the military intelligence people call H2 and H3, the most westward of the Iraqi Scud missile bases, the ones that could have endangered Israel. Those were, of course, amongst the first that were destroyed by the U.S. Air Force. Now, joining us now from the CNN Bureau in Washington is James Blackwell. James Blackwell is a highly respected military analyst at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington. Now, Mr. Blackwell, if these initial indications are true, what, in your opinion, does this mean as far as the war is concerned?
Well, Wolf, these are some remarkable descriptive terms already being ascribed to the results of this airstrike. The total destruction of any nation's air force, much less one with 700 to 800 aircraft, is a remarkable accomplishment. Killing all of the Scud missiles on the ground before they could be launched implies an incredible degree of the achievement of surprise and shutting down air defenses in the process in order to accomplish that. Perhaps the most impressive rhetoric or report that you have passed on to us out of the Pentagon is the decimation of a large portion, indeed perhaps the majority, of the Republican Guards force, which is in fact, in the judgment of many of us, the center of gravity of the Iraqi occupying forces. If all of this has happened, then this war will be over very, very soon, because Iraq has virtually no choice whatsoever except to sit there and be surrounded and then to surrender. I stress that that's a mighty big if. What will happen today in broad daylight will be counting tanks, re-looking at the airfields to make sure that the destruction that we're reporting now has in fact happened.
Mr. Blackwell, let me ask you this other question. Do you sense, though, that there could be an element of overconfidence coming out of these initial reports, or do you sense that this is that the United States and others simply had overestimated Iraqi military capability in these months leading up to this war?
I don't think they overestimated Iraq's military capability. They may have, if these reports are true, they may have underestimated the capabilities of our own high-technology systems, as well as the American forces' ability to orchestrate this kind of combat power. After all, they're the ones that are going to realize that this has never been done before. And they probably approached it with a prudent degree of military conservatism. Even General Powell and Mr. Cheney have expressed that kind of conservatism in their reports. Certainly the kind of descriptions you've been getting exceed that of the language used by the General and the Secretary early on. Again, I'd have to stress that if I were in a command post in a field getting these kinds of reports, I would insist that they be checked and double-checked and actual counts be made and pass that kind of information in before we make those kinds of conclusions.
Well, one thing that we have learned only in the last few minutes is that, and this comes from well-placed Pentagon officials, one thing we have learned is that it appears that the U.S. airstrikes have now stopped, that there has been a pause, at least for the time being, that the satellites will fly over and we'll take some pictures and see exactly what the extent of the damage was. As I mentioned earlier, though, there are no reports, at least coming into the Pentagon yet, of any U.S. fighter aircraft that have gone down. Now, if, Mr. Blackwell, if there is a pause now, if the U.S. Air Force and the Navy fighters have stopped bombing, what does that signify to you?
Well, it probably is a brief pause in order to conduct reconnaissance and battle damage assessments, because doctrinally, even when you are sure you hit, say, an airfield, you want to hit it again a couple of times in the coming 24 hours so that the local capability to rebuild or to repair airfields is not reestablished and airplanes come up unexpectedly. So this doctrinally would be a pause before you begin the next wave, digesting some of this battle damage assessment. But if the kind of destruction that they've been describing to you has happened, then there's nothing doctrinal about this. This has been an outcome that far surpasses even the most optimistic air power advocates' estimates of what would happen.
Let me ask you this question about the elite Republican Guards. If, in fact, the U.S. Fighter aircraft, the bombers, did manage to destroy a big chunk of those Republican Guards, the elite forces, the best trained, what will that mean for the Iraqis as far as a ground war, a land war with the U.S. military is concerned?
Well, it depends on how much of the Republican Guards was destroyed. If American air power was able to destroy most of the tanks that were dug in, then Saddam Hussein has lost the capability to reinforce his defenses in Kuwait. He's lost the capability to counterattack into Saudi Arabia. Indeed, he's lost the combination of his Air Force, the missiles, and the Republican Guards. He's lost the ability to threaten his neighbors militarily once again.
What was the key to this kind of very decisive and reportedly very impressive U.S. airstrike, in your opinion?
The key is to the success of this kind of thing, even if it's not all over, is the coordination, what we like to call the battle management of all this high technology. It's not quite enough to have a missile that's capable of reaching deep to hit a target with great precision. You have to be able to know what targets to hit, to be able to assess which ones have been hit, retarget, if you will, and to be able to coordinate to make sure that all the targets you want to hit, in this case probably over 1,000, are hit within a relatively short period of time. So the information processing technologies, the command and staff procedures of the various headquarters involved in planning the operations, and ultimately the skill and courage of the individual fighters who delivered these weapons in this most unusual kind of a fight are what combined in a synergistic way to provide this apparently very successful outcome.
James Blackwell of the Center for Strategic and International Studies here in Washington, thank you for joining us this evening. Let me recap now some of these big headlines that we've been reporting, and let me make it clear that this information comes from well-placed Pentagon officials here in Washington. The U.S., joined by the British, the Saudi, and the Kuwaiti Air Force, undertook a massive airstrike and is now reportedly in control of the skies. Almost all of the U.S. planes, in fact, there are no reports of any U.S. planes missing. All the U.S. planes are reported to have returned safely. There is now reportedly, we are told, a pause by the U.S. Navy and Air Force planes. They are going to assess what the damage was, but the initial indications are that the airstrikes were so massive that almost all of the Republican Guard, the elite Iraqi military, the word was used, decimated. Almost all of them have been decimated, and certainly the Iraqi Air Force, very few Iraqi planes even managed to come up and challenge the invading U.S. fighters. Obviously a very remarkable development. We're going to be following the story all evening, throughout the day. Back to Susan in Atlanta.
Thank you, Wolf. Stefan Kotsanis reports from Ankara, Turkey, that Turkey is apparently ready to declare war against Iraq. He is standing by live on the phone. What can you tell us?
Well, it's not certain yet if they actually will declare war. What's clear is that a short while ago, Turkey's Prime Minister Yildirim Akbulut held a press conference to announce that Parliament will meet early today to authorize a declaration of war. That gives the government a free hand to open up a second front if need be. What's also important is that Akbulut announced that the United States is free to go ahead and use the bases here to launch attacks into Iraq. I have no word here in Ankara if the U.S. has actually done that yet, but the assumption is that that is only a matter of time.
Stefan, that is a change from the previous Turkish position that said that the U.S. airbase in Incirlik would only be used for defensive purposes and refueling purposes.
What it basically comes down to is this. Prime Minister Ozal has recently started hinting that they may want to let the United States take use the bases more fully, and they may even want to get in on the war themselves. Their feeling is that when Hussein invaded Kuwait, the map of the region changed completely. Their fear is that Syria and Iran may take advantage of the situation to try and make a land grab, and they want to be in on whatever settlement happens at the end. And as Ozal put it to journalists recently, if you want to get in at the settlement table, you have to play the game up beforehand.
What about the extra troops now being stationed on the Iraqi border? Do you have any reports on the number of troops on the Turkish side and on the Iraqi side?
My understanding is on the Turkish side, they are at around 100,000. I can't be sure if there are any changes tonight and if they're getting ready to launch. I have no information on that yet.
Stefan Kotsanis reporting to us from Ankara, Turkey. Thank you. Pat?
Now let's go to Linda Scherzer, who's live at our CNN bureau in Jerusalem for the very latest from there. Linda?
Well, Israeli radio is reporting now that Saudi television has just reported that Saddam Hussein's palace has been destroyed. That report comes from veteran journalist Mickey Gordis, who has been closely monitoring the situation by radio in the Gulf, and he also reports now that Saddam Hussein has appeared on Baghdad radio. He is hearing him now, but we don't know if that is a live or a taped report. In Israel, the mood here is one of relief. The Pentagon has announced that the danger to Israel has passed, and even before the Pentagon made that announcement, a senior Army officer went on Israeli television to say that missile launchers and bases in western Iraq, the bases that had posed the greatest threat to Israel, had been dealt a serious blow by Allied bombers. What's most significant here is the calm that is felt. There have been no sirens that have sounded, no blackouts. The streets are rather empty, but that's because it's just a little after 6 o'clock here in Israel, and most people are either still sleeping or just waking up. I'm also told that at Ben Gurion Airport, there were 3 plane loads of Soviet Jewish immigrants who arrived this morning to receive the news that war had started, but that it appeared that Israel would not be involved. And that's the message that officials have been saying from the outset, and certainly the scenario that they've been hoping for. People are still being advised to stay at home, to keep close to their gas masks. They're being told to open up the boxes now. Just a little while ago, Deputy Foreign Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was in our studio, and he was here carrying his gas mask as well. But that is purely a precautionary measure. Again, the mood here is one of great relief. The Pentagon has announced that the danger has passed. Israelis are just waking up to the news, and after several days of tension, that news is very welcome indeed.
Okay, Linda Scherzer reporting live from Jerusalem. Thank you very much. Susan?
CNN's Robert Vito is in San Diego. Robert, you have, of course, been listening to the reports all throughout the evening. What is the reaction from your angle?
Well, here at this apartment in San Diego, we've had the privilege to spend several hours with several Navy wives whose husbands are stationed aboard ships in the Persian Gulf. And it's really been very remarkable. Their feelings, their emotions, their tears, their holding hands. And the feeling here has been one of a sense of great relief. And I think that at least the women in this room feel that maybe it will be over very soon. Heather, I think that's what you expressed to me, and you also expressed the feeling that there is a sense of maybe things changing.
Yeah, I think that now that we have actually done something to Hussein, that maybe he's going to get the picture that he made a big mistake in messing with the United States and the United Nations, and that he can't push people around anymore. I mean, what he's put on his people and on the other countries of the world, they're not going to take it anymore.
Thank you, Heather. I'm going to ask Kim, could you come over here? Kim's husband is serving aboard the Acadia. Come on right up here. Thanks. What was your reaction to President Bush's address?
I thought he did very well in getting across his point and making everybody understand why he's done this and why he did it as quickly as he did. And I think everybody was really behind him when he did. I know I was.
Do you have the sense that your husband might be coming home soon?
From his vantage point at the El Rashid Hotel, CNN's Bernard Shaw described the first frightening moments of the air assault.
Just one comment. Clearly, I've never been there, but this feels like we're in the center of hell.
Privately, Pentagon sources described the initial airstrike on Iraq and occupied Kuwait as a blowout.
The airstrike was massive, was devastating, and indeed those reports appear to be very, very impressive as far as the United States is concerned. Iraq's air bases, and there are probably about 100 Iraqi air bases. Almost all of them appear to have been destroyed, according to Pentagon officials, who tell CNN that those air bases were pinpointed by the F-15s, the F-16s, A-6 carrier-based aircraft that came into Saudi Arabia, landed at forward bases, and then took off and returned to those bases in Saudi Arabia. The Iraqi Air Force, except for a few notable exceptions, didn't even come up to challenge the invading U.S. fighters. It was an extremely impressive U.S. airstrike.
Publicly, the top Pentagon officials were more cautious in reporting on the success of the attack, conducted by hundreds of U.S., British, Saudi, and Kuwaiti aircraft.
So far, there has been no air resistance.
Can you tell us if there's been any casualties so far?
We will, at the appropriate time, be...
The victory is very near. And as we told you a few minutes ago, Patrick, we've gotten permission from Iraqi television to send you some pictures, but it appears from what we can tell, Iraqi television has no ability to transmit pictures right now. We're attempting to work with them to get those pictures to you as soon as we can, and we'll let you know when we know more about the timetable for releasing them. At any rate, here in Baghdad, things at our hotel are coming back to normal. We're attempting to...
John, excuse me just for a second, if I can. John, just a sec. We're looking at some pool video. I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but we are looking for some pool video that was apparently shot before the attacks earlier yesterday. This is pool video of an Air Force base in Saudi Arabia, apparently seeing some of the planes being readied for the attack that...
As the president ordered the attack on Baghdad, some of the Pentagon planners and the military analysts said that a sweep mission into Iraq or Kuwait would probably be led by an F-15 squadron.
It'll be visible in Jordan, and we need a translator.
I'm sorry, John, we were stepping all over each other. What did you say? Repeat that.
I'm sorry, Susan. I was giving our whole network, as well as our viewers, a message that the Iraqi television authorities have just told CNN they will be transmitting a message from President Saddam Hussein in just a couple of minutes. I believe 8:30 is just a couple of minutes from now. So we don't know whether they'll have the facility to do that. We hope they will, and we just wanted to alert those of the technical people along the CNN network line who have to do things for us to present those pictures to you, that we'll need a translator to translate the President's words into English, and we'll need some technical work done so that we'll be able to see and hear President Saddam Hussein, but it might be coming up pretty soon.
All right, thank you, John. We will, of course, endeavor to get that to you live, translated as quickly as possible, of course. The F-15 squadrons are supposed to be a very important part of the U.S.-led effort in an attack on Iraq or Kuwait. For example, 4 F-15s would dart ahead of a bomb-laden attack plane trying to perhaps open a furrow in the sky by shooting any Iraqi resistance. Again, there apparently was little or no Iraqi resistance. Patrick?
Again, that was pool video. We are awaiting our video from Baghdad, as we heard from John Holloman. John Sweeney is in Riyadh. He's live right now with the very latest from there. John, I'm not sure if you can see this pool video, but we see a pilot in an Air Force jet, obviously shot prior to the attacks into Kuwait and into Iraq.
Indeed, that's what you're seeing, the very first pictures of, these are F-15 Strike Eagle aircraft, the United States' best fighter. It can be heavily armed, and indeed, these planes, we're here from Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, originally in North Carolina. They took off at around 12:45 a.m. Saudi time. That's about 17 hours after the UN deadline. And this is the first wave of aircraft being prepared for takeoff. These particular Strike Eagle planes carry a 2-man crew, a pilot and a navigator and a bomber who flies in the rear. The ground crews loaded many of the planes with a dozen half-ton cluster bombs and 4 air-to-air heat-seeking missiles. The F-15 Strike Eagle is the newest version of the F-15, equipped with infrared night vision system. And obviously, as they led the attack, they were quite successful with that night vision. They encountered, as we now know, very little Iraqi air resistance over Kuwait and Iraq. They were perhaps even more successful than anyone thought. And they indeed, as we have heard, apparently decimated the Iraqi Air Force. As we've heard from the Pentagon, Wolf Blitzer, 100 Air Force bases apparently destroyed. Many of those, however, were attacked by carrier-based aircraft, as we understand. The F-14 Tomcat is a very similar plane to this F-15 that we're looking at here, being prepared by the ground crews in this largest air base in Saudi Arabia, which we're still not allowed to identify. It seems to be remarkably calm as these people are preparing for what is one of the most momentous occasions, really, in U.S. military history. Perhaps that's a tribute to the professionalism of the crews involved and the fact that they've been training here for the past 5 months. I would say that this is probably the best trained military contingent that the United States has ever sent into war, because they've been here so long practicing on site. Again, this is the United States' most lethal air weapon, the F-15 Strike Eagle, being prepared for takeoff. Again, these planes originally came from Johnson Air Force Base in North Carolina.
Again, we have been listening to CNN's John Sweeney, who is reporting to us from Saudi Arabia. We are looking at Pentagon pool video of F-15 Eagles as they are about to be deployed from Saudi Arabia. John, once the F-15s were aloft, how long would it take them to get from Saudi Arabia to Baghdad?
I couldn't give you the exact time, but these planes, it wouldn't take very long. I'm sorry I can't give you a more specific answer, but it wouldn't take very long. We've been watching these planes for several months over here, and they have a booster thruster in the back, and many of the pilots were telling us some months ago, before the war started, that they enjoyed flying in Saudi Arabia, especially because this booster that they use utilizes an awful lot of fuel, and in the United States they weren't always allowed to use that, but here they had the great access to fuel, so these pilots who love to fly anyway would usually hit this booster thruster. I hope I'm describing it correctly, and we'd see this long tail of flames shooting out of these planes, and all of a sudden it would shoot into the sky as faster than you could imagine.
John, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Patrick.
John, where the Saudi Arabia also has the same aircraft, did they fly out of this? So we're looking at pool video as we continue to look at this. Where did the Saudis fly out of? Do you know if they were involved in this particular video we're seeing here?
Yeah, the Saudis fly out of the same air base, and during their practice training missions, frequently they would fly together, as they did indeed on the real thing.
John, thank you very much. John Sweeney reporting to us from Saudi Arabia as we continue to look at unedited Pentagon pool video of the F-15 Eagles being prepared for battle in Saudi Arabia. One of the people that rode out the attack of Baghdad is CNN's John Holloman. He rejoins us now. While it is apparently not Pentagon pool video, it is U.S. news media pool video. John Holloman is rejoining us now from Baghdad. John.
Hi again, Susan. It's kind of a confusing situation now, I'm sure, as the Pentagon and perhaps even the Iraqis will let us all send our pictures in to CNN, and our viewers will just get a montage of views of this war from both sides of the lines. At least that's what we hope and trust. Iraqi television has just told us they will attempt to feed the world and CNN a message from President Saddam Hussein in the next few minutes. So far, we are told that there are two ways to get pictures and sounds out of Iraq to the rest of the world. The normal ways to do it are a path that goes over land and a path that goes through a satellite. And the people at the receiving end of both of those paths say they're not receiving anything from Iraq right now. We hope that problem will be solved soon and that we'll be able to see those pictures of the message from President Saddam Hussein, plus CNN's video, which we shot during the attack. We're told that the head of Iraqi television will have to look at our pictures before we're allowed to send them out to you and the rest of the world. We don't know how long that process will take because we do have several different sets of pictures to show you. But at any rate, we hope that'll be coming up pretty soon as technical problems at Iraqi TV can be solved. One more thing. We had been told, we had expected before what happened last night happened, that Iraqi television would be a target of the coalition forces. It turned out it was not. There's no damage to the TV station, according to CNN's Chris Chrismanich, who was just there. They don't have telephone service, nor does anyone in Baghdad, as far as we know. And there's still no electricity anywhere else in the city, but Iraqi television has generators, so they are up and running. That's the latest and the newest information I have. Susan?
All right. Thank you, CNN's John Holloman, keeping us up to date from Baghdad. Patrick?
Right now, we're going to go to CNN's Mitch Leopard, who's standing by in London, and there people are anticipating the address by the new British Prime Minister. Mitch, what's the latest?
Well, Patrick, it was just before midnight London time when Operation Desert Storm began. The Ministry of Defense here did confirm that British forces were involved in the initial attacks, Britain has 35,000 troops in the Gulf, as well as 60 aircraft in the naval armada. It is the second largest military force behind the United States. Despite the late hour at Trafalgar Square in London, late shift workers were converging to take the all-night buses home, and there was much reaction.
I think that war was inevitable, but I'm really sad that it started. Now that it has, I just hope it's over as quickly as possible and as few lives are lost as possible.
I'm just majorly shocked. I'm just worried for the people who are out there, especially all, you know, so I've got several mates on aircraft carrier. Guy I know, really close friend back home, he's on an aircraft carrier, and it's majorly worrying for him.
The fact that Britain is playing such an important part in the war poses great problems for us, people who live in London, after the war is finished, because I think this city will become a target for terrorism for years to come.
Not far away in Whitehall, government offices had extra security. There you find offices for the Ministry of Defense, the Foreign Office, offices where all coordination for emergency medical services for injured troops take place, and of course, number 10 Downing Street, the Prime Minister's residence. John Major spoke with President Bush before the attack, and just after, protesters in front of Downing Street were against American and British forces in the Gulf.
This is the seat of the Tory government. This is where the people who made the decision to massacre innocent Iraqis are actually to be found, and therefore this is where we find our enemy, and we'll come and demonstrate against them.
As has often been the case, CNN's worldwide reach showed President Bush addressing Americans. Only this time, his audience included night owls at an all-night coffee shop in London's West End.
While the world waited, while the world talked peace and withdrawal, Saddam Hussein dug in and moved.
Seems to be taking off and going. This videotape obviously was taken earlier this evening as the United States undertook this massive operation codenamed Desert Storm. Interestingly enough, Storm probably came from Stormin Norman, General Norman Schwarzkopf, the commander of Operation Desert Shield. Here's looks like a ground crew person, but we can't hear exactly what he's saying. This is Wolf Blitzer reporting live from the Pentagon. Now back to you, Patrick, in Atlanta.
Again, what we're watching here is U.S. pool tape, and there is an interview, as you can see, but the audio, we don't have any control over that. That has been fed in. We do not hear what exactly he was saying, but again, that was U.S. pool video, presumably of the fighters returning from their mission into Iraq and into Kuwait. Susan?
Again, we also need to point out that we expect to hear an address from Saddam Hussein on Iraqi television. We don't know when this will be, but CNN's crews in Baghdad have been told to expect an address from Saddam Hussein to the Iraqi people on television, quote, momentarily. Now, we should point out that we don't know when that address was taped. We will, of course, attempt to bring it to you live or as soon as possible. We also plan to broadcast our own video shot by CNN crews that weathered the artillery, the storm, last night in Baghdad. We will bring that to you live, unedited, as soon as it is fed into CNN's headquarters here in Atlanta. Meantime, in the United States, members of Congress were quick to react to the beginning of war against Iraq. Most expressed hope that the conflict ends quickly with a minimum number of casualties. Some lawmakers also praise what they consider the apparent U.S. upper hand in the assault.
The difference between or it was another gentleman, the difference between the UN and Allied forces and the Iraqi is that the field commanders have appropriate ability to give appropriate orders in our particular procedures, and the Iraqis take their order from a single point, and they apparently blew out the command and control centers at each location. That, I would think, is what must have occurred, because they did not seem to respond, at least the Iraqi air arm did not seem to respond, which I would think would possibly mean that many of them were taken out on the ground.
Even if the air forces don't do it entirely themselves, they may do 90% of it or 80% of it, in which case then the ground force operation would be fairly simple. But I would be very surprised. I'm still skeptical. I mean, put me down as skeptical. I think that you're going to need a ground attack, that this thing is going to be weeks, not days. that we're still going to need, we're going to have some casualties here. In other words, don't let this optimism here, don't let it carry you away.
One California congressman was outraged by the war effort, but most were supportive. By the end of the week, Congress is expected to have a resolution supporting the president's action.
Cuban President Fidel Castro says the attack on Iraq could have been avoided. Mr. Castro was giving a news conference when he found out that the multinational force had attacked Iraq. He says, quote, "It's an unnecessary war. Anything can happen there, even an ecological catastrophe." Castro says the U.S., quote, "was bent on war when a peaceful solution could have been found," unquote.
My feelings are that of shock and horror that is felt by all, and which the entire world must be feeling. Feelings of a great sorrow, a great awareness of what war is and can mean, the loss of human life, and the great material destruction. I think also of the terrible consequences that it will have on the world economy, especially for the countries of the third world, and of the potential dangers that exist within that war that should never have been unleashed, and which, as I said before, was unnecessary for obtaining the objectives that they wanted in the UN.
And the Cuban leader went on to say that he has a feeling of pain, of very deep bitterness. He says the mentality of the Arab countries was... This, again, is U.S. pool tape. As you can see, people preparing, servicemen preparing with their chemical weapons, their gas masks. In preparation, there were a number of warnings in Saudi Arabia and elsewhere throughout the Middle East that of concern of an impending, perhaps retaliatory attack by Scud missiles from Iraq. But again, those have not been confirmed. Apparently, the Scud missiles did not leave Iraq and hit anywhere else. But as you can see, U.S. service personnel getting ready for a possible chemical attack. This was taken earlier. Again, this is U.S. pool video. Obviously, after the massive airstrikes, things have calmed down significantly, and we would presume that people are not in this mode where they would be wearing their chemical weapons apparatus. Again, we presume this was shot prior to the airstrikes into Iraq and Kuwait by the four nations involved, including the United States, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Great Britain.
Everywhere it said right here. Okay, take off the hood and tighten the strap. You got a zipper right here on the bottom. Okay, that's my mouth. Look at that. Hey there. Stay low, everybody.
Again, what we're seeing are U.S. personnel equipping themselves with anti-chemical weapon gear, as you can see, including gas masks. This was shot earlier by the U.S. pool, and video that we have just received here at the CNN Center in Atlanta.
The American-led forces, of course, was very concerned about the possibility that Iraq would use chemical weapons. One commander saying that he was forced to assume that Iraq would attack American troops with a range of biological and chemical weapons which can be deadly. They are not necessarily deadly. During the 8-year Iran-Iraq war, Saddam Hussein reportedly used chemical weapons during that war. Among the casualties, only about 10% were estimated to be from chemical weapons. But of course, the United States has established that Iraq has manufactured and used chemical weapons both during the Iran-Iraq war and also against Iraq's own Kurdish population.
Wolf Blitzer is joining us once again live at the Pentagon. Wolf, as you can see, this latest U.S. pool video. Yes. You want to fill us in on what we're seeing?
Well, I got a small monitor here, Patrick, but it looks like a obviously a military vehicle at an air base someplace in Saudi Arabia. And according to the Pentagon ground rules, we're not allowed to say where these air bases are located for security reasons. Here comes some of the additional ground equipment. Looks like it's obviously a very huge air base.
Wolf, let me just have you reiterate something you did a little while ago, and I think it's very important that we are in a lull in terms of the bombing for damage assessment by the Pentagon, but this by no means means that there will not be any additional bombing or that the war is over or anything like that. As you said, I think we need to clarify that for our viewers.
That's absolutely correct, Patrick. The war is by no means over. What is over is the initial U.S. airstrike. We're told now that the U.S. Air Force and the Navy fighters have paused. They want to reassess exactly what has happened, take a look at all of the Iraqi damage, send the satellites over, send some other high-flying U.S. reconnaissance planes over. Now that it appears that the U.S. air power owns the skies, and as I'm saying, this appears to be the case because only a handful of Iraqi planes even took off to challenge some of these invading U.S. aircraft. The U.S. will have a relatively easy opportunity now to assess the entire damage that was inflicted by this initial U.S. airstrike. But we are told that the airstrikes have stopped for the time being. The crews have returned. We have no reports yet, and I want to stress yet, we have no reports yet of any U.S. casualties or any of the U.S. planes that may have been lost or are missing. So far, that seems to be pretty much okay as far as the Pentagon is concerned. Here come some more military vehicles over at this air base in Saudi Arabia, awaiting the return of some of the U.S. fighters that went into this pinpoint airstrike. And Pete Williams, the Pentagon spokesman, a little while ago, stopped by and told some of the journalists who are still at the Pentagon, and there are plenty of journalists here, obviously, that the U.S. has no evidence that the Iraqis managed to launch any of their Scud ballistic missiles, their ground-to-ground ballistic missiles. Some were supposedly armed with chemical warheads, but the U.S. cannot confirm that any of the Iraqi missiles were launched. The initial targets U.S. officials had always felt would be the U.S. air bases, the oil facilities in eastern Saudi Arabia, as well as Israel. We're told that the major Iraqi Scud ballistic missile sites, and there goes our feed from Saudi Arabia, we're told that the major Iraqi ballistic missile sites in the western part of Iraq, what the U.S. intelligence community has dubbed as H2 and H3, those were among the initial U.S. targets. They were destroyed, and U.S. officials tell CNN that the immediate threat to Israel clearly has been eased. Patrick?
Wolf, in terms...
One, we've received a report from one of the journalist pools out in the field that reports about an hour and a half to 2 hours ago, they saw a flight of 9 U.S. F-15s, 3 Kuwaiti Hawk model jets, and 4 British Tornado jets take off. Now, about the same time we were outside, we saw 1 squadron of F-15s, their afterburners glowing, arcing up into the cloudy sky and heading north toward the Kuwaiti border. We're not sure, of course, if all this means much of anything. These could be essentially reconnaissance in force flights. However, there is a handout from the British Armed Forces Information Desk here, which talks about the initial phase of the operation, which began this morning, and they stress initial, and they end the communique by saying operations continue. So there is some thought here that perhaps, and I have to stress perhaps, based on this evidence, there might be a second wave, at least preparing to be in progress. Again, there's no confirmation of that, but there has been a fairly heavy amount of air traffic in this area. One other thing we have to stress from here, there have been some reports, we understand it, of some sort of Iraqi Scud missiles that were launched in the direction of Saudi Arabia. We have checked with both U.S. and Saudi defense sources here, and they categorically deny it. They say it's untrue. They say, as far as they know, during this entire operation, they have detected no sort of Iraqi counterstrike, either in the form of guided missiles or in the form, indeed, of airstrikes headed towards Saudi Arabia, that the skies have been completely clear. The one thing that the defense people here also want to stress is that ground forces has not even begun to be used yet, that there may be reason for optimism, but there is certainly no reason at this point to declare any sort of victory, because you have around 500,000 Iraqi forces still dug in Kuwait, And even if the reports are true that the Iraqi Air Force and most of their elite Republican guards have been destroyed, there is still the matter of all those troops in Kuwait that would have to be dislodged if they don't surrender, and they would have to be dislodged by a ground assault. But people here are watching and waiting to see what might happen next. Charles Jaco, CNN, reporting live from Saudi Arabia.
Charles, from your vantage,
the feed could come up at any time, but there's no pathway that we have determined as yet to get the pictures and sounds out of Baghdad to Jordan, which is where our satellite uplink is, so the CNN flyaway unit. So that's why we're having trouble getting those pictures and sounds to you. Situation in downtown Baghdad, no water. It needs electricity to be pumped. Electricity is still off. Telephones, wait. I was about to tell you telephones were still out, but as you can hear, telephone service has this instant been restored, at least to the point that phones will ring here. This may help us communicate with the TV station and get these pictures to you a little bit sooner. At any rate, the Iraqi government has issued a statement about the attack last night, saying President Bush will regret the attack. The Americans and their allies will be taught a lesson. Saddam Hussein, as we told you, is planning to address the Iraqi people. The Jordan, Iraq's closest ally in this region, perhaps at the moment, has closed its airspace to all incoming and outgoing flights, which means there's no way for any flight from Iraq to get to the outside world. And let's see, Saddam Hussein said in a Baghdad radio message that was broadcast about an hour ago, "The mother of all battles has started. Victory is very near." Those are two quotes from Iraqi President Saddam Hussein. On the streets of Baghdad, still very quiet. There's some traffic out there, still very foggy outside. John Holloman, CNN Live in Baghdad.
John, let me ask you a question that you were asked earlier about the damage. Obviously, you and your colleagues, Bernie Shaw and Peter Arnett, as well as some other CNN people, were in the hotel during the onslaught of all of the bombing around Baghdad. Again, though, as far as your own damage estimate, as you go out visually and look around, you don't see any major damage, at least from where you are near the hotel?
No, Patrick, we don't see any damage in the hotel. Certainly none in the area that we can see from the hotel, and that takes you out about a mile or two, because we're up pretty high. Chris Krismanich, who's been to Iraqi television, says the TV station is just absolutely intact, and so she's been out further than we have, and she reports that there's no damage visible in downtown Baghdad, but we saw a lot of activity outside of town. One of the first places we're going to go today, if we get an opportunity to get in a vehicle and travel, and we're sure it's safe to do that, is out to the airport, the international airport. It looked to us like much of the fighting that was going on, much of the bombing that was being done was in the vicinity of Saddam International Airport. And we'll want to go there and take some pictures first to see if our estimate is in fact correct. And then if the Iraqi officials will allow it, we'll go around all over the countryside here and see just exactly what damage was done by the coalition attack overnight.
John, with your discussions with the Iraqi officials who... John, just stand by on the phone. We're going to go to Susan right now with a late development. Susan?
Apparently, we are going to pull video. This was shot yesterday as U.S. and multinational forces. We think it was shot yesterday as U.S. and multinational forces were getting ready for the overnight airstrike against Baghdad, an airstrike that our correspondent John Holloman and the CNN crew in Baghdad weathered and gave us live, harrowing accounts of the attack as it was underway. And just to give you a little bit of background, as we're watching this unedited U.S. pool tape, when the orders actually came for the fighter pilots to get under the way, the men assembled in the squad room very quickly, of course. In recent nights and for about the past week, they have made a point at sleeping very close to the squad room so that they could get there very quickly. They've been sleeping in nearby bunkers. They then received a highly technical briefing involving which bombers they would be escorting, which altitudes they would be flying, all sort of housekeeping things like this. We have just confirmed that this was shot yesterday. Again, as things actually heat up, The crews got the orders which altitudes, which bombers they would be escorting, which refueling tankers they would use, and of course which targets the mission, their particular mission would be asked to destroy. Let's listen. Of course, are looking at unedited U.S. pool tape. It was apparently shot yesterday as U.S. forces were getting ready for the overnight assault on Baghdad and reportedly also Kuwait. They are loading the bombs on the F-15 Eagle, part of the U.S. Air Force. It has a dual role as a fighter and an attack aircraft. CNN's Wolf Blitzer is joining us from the Pentagon as we continue to look at the pictures of the unedited U.S. pool tape.
Well, these F-15 Eagles are really the best U.S. air superiority fighter aircraft, and they obviously played a very important role in this initial U.S.-led airstrike. We're seeing some of these bombs and missiles that were attached to the F-15 before the airstrikes. Clearly, the fighter aircraft returned to these air bases in Saudi Arabia without their bombs, without their missiles. Most of these missiles are really what they call smart munitions, very sophisticated laser-guided, television-guided missiles that don't only fall, what they used to call dumb bombs, but they can be directed in specific pinpointed locations. And once the AWACS, the air surveillance aircraft, the satellites, once all of the targets have been identified, then it's relatively easy for the sophisticated computer technology in these F-15 Eagles and other U.S. fighter bombers to go ahead and direct the missiles, the bombs, to the specific locations, the specific targets. And as we've been reporting all evening, the Pentagon officials with whom we've discussed this issue say that there were some very, very impressive, as far as the U.S. is concerned, very impressive strikes.
Well, we should also point out that these planes are fast. They are able to fly as much as 2.5 times the speed of sound. Just incredible machines.
That's right, and they're probably the best in the world. The Iraqis do have some excellent fighter aircraft of their own. The Soviet-made MiG-29s, the French-made F-1 Mirages. But Pentagon officials tell CNN that very few Iraqi planes even got off the ground to challenge the U.S. Aircraft that went in. Most of the Iraqi air bases appear to have been destroyed or knocked out of commission, allowing the United States now and its allies to basically have what the U.S. said it would always want to have in the initial hours of any strike, air superiority, to be able to dominate the skies, and then basically at will decide what would be the outcome.
Wolf, have you been able to confirm how many U.S., British, and other allied forces planes were able to get off the ground last night and participate in this airstrike against Baghdad?
Well, Defense Secretary Dick Cheney publicly used the figure hundreds, said that hundreds of aircraft were involved in this initial strike. We do know from an earlier briefing yesterday that the United States has about 1,700 combat aircraft, fixed-wing combat aircraft, and another almost equal number of combat helicopters in place. In addition, the Saudis have a relatively large air force with F-15s as well. The Kuwaitis have a modest air force. Many of their planes did manage to escape in the aftermath of the Iraqi invasion. Here we see some more of the ground crews taking some of these bombs, some of these missiles, and getting them ready to be loaded aboard these F-15 Eagles. Now, the F-15E is the best of the F-15s. There's the C and the D version, which are older, not as sophisticated, don't have the capabilities of the F-15E. And certainly the United States wanted to use the best of its aircraft, and these F-15s are among the best.
Wolf, do you have any update on a report that we got from Charles Jaco in eastern Saudi Arabia that he witnessed 9 F-15s from the United States, 3 Hawks from Kuwait, and 4 Tornadoes from the Great Britain, from the British Air Force taking off from his vantage point, and that perhaps there was going to be some additional bombing taking place. Any word at all from the Pentagon?
No, Patrick. The word here at the Pentagon is that after this massive initial U.S. strike, the Pentagon and the other allies decided to pause. It shouldn't be all that surprising, though, that there have been some other planes taking off, even if it doesn't portend yet another round of airstrikes, because they want to make sure that the targets that were supposedly destroyed were in fact destroyed. So I wouldn't necessarily conclude from these initial reports from our colleague Charles Jaco in Saudi Arabia that this means that the United States and the Allies are yet again starting a second round of airstrikes. Here we see some more unedited tape from the Pentagon pool. Some of these missiles that are getting ready to be put aboard some of the U.S. fighter aircraft. Obviously, this took place just before the United States went ahead and took the offensive and undertook this massive strike. Let's see if we can hear what they're saying. These are ground crews, U.S. Air Force ground crews in Saudi Arabia. We're not allowed to say, according to the Pentagon ground rules, exactly where this base is located.
Wolf, presumably if the attack was as successful as the Pentagon leads us to believe, then obviously the added advantage of being able to bomb with these F-15 Eagles at night with their sophisticated computer technology, obviously then that would not be as difficult to go in and bomb during the day, where they could use more visual targeting. Is that correct?
Clearly, if the U.S. does have complete air superiority and has destroyed most of the anti-aircraft missile batteries, the anti-aircraft artillery placements, then the United States Air Force and the other allied air forces involved in what is now called Desert Storm, they could go ahead and undertake these kinds of strikes in plain daylight. But certainly the Air Force, the Navy, the Pentagon wanted to begin this operation at night to take advantage of the U.S. night fighting capability.
Wolf, this is Susan again. Reportedly, the F-15 Eagles would, in several military analysts, make up the initial scenario, the initial thrust into Iraq and occupied Kuwait. From your sources in the Pentagon, was it primarily F-15s or a whole series of other crafts?
What we're told, it was several U.S. aircraft, both carrier-based as well as ground-based. Certainly the F-117A stealth fighters, about 40 or 50 of them are in place. They were sent in to knock out some of the most dangerous strategic targets, and they supposedly are invisible to enemy aircraft. In addition, F-16s, excellent planes. The A-6s, the carrier-based, the Intruder, we're told that they didn't actually take off from the carriers. They went into forward air bases close to the line, and from there, after the pilots had a chance to rest up a little bit, they then took off from the ground and unloaded their bombs at the targets in Kuwait and Iraq and returned to these forward air bases.
Wolf, excuse me. We are going back to Baghdad. CNN's John Holloman. John, what is the latest? We're hearing reports that you are under attack.
I'm afraid that's true, Susan. It's happened once at night. Now it's daytime. It's very foggy outside, and I'm going to let you hear the sounds as I hear them out the window. There's a little blue sky overhead. We don't see any of the flashes of light. that we were seeing in the dark night that occurred a while ago. You can hear, though, I believe, the anti-aircraft guns as they fire up into the sky here. It's so foggy, we're unable to see anything. But we heard far, far away, about 3 or 4 minutes ago, the first bombs falling here. This is eerie. Eerie is the right word. They're birds, look like doves, flying around our hotel, fairly shaken up by all the new sounds that are being heard out in Baghdad. I see a group of people running out of one government building near the tomb of the unknown soldier here in Baghdad. Obviously, the sounds of the fighting have shaken them up, and they're trying to get to some place of safety. For the past month and a half, Iraqi television has been telling the people of Baghdad what to do for civil defense, how to get to places of safety. And as we look at the 8-lane highway in front of our hotel, I see a taxi cab going down the road about 30 miles an hour backwards in reverse. The driver obviously trying to get away from the source of all that sound. We, in our CNN crew, as we've been preparing for what might happen next, never anticipated we'd see something else happening in the daylight. And from our vantage point, we really can't see, because of the heavy, thick fog, what is going on, but we can certainly hear the sound. There's been a lull. Well, I just heard another bomb blast, but I'm sure a bomb blast at a distance very far from our hotel. I would say maybe 5 or 10 miles. It sounds like the firing of 26-inch guns from a battleship, actually, when you're, maybe 20 or 30 miles away from the battleship. It's just a very loud explosions, but at a very great distance away. And I'll try to describe, now that we have some daylight, I can at least give you a better picture of the street scenes here. There are still cars going up and down on this street, but many cars are traveling in reverse. It's like you're watching a motion picture played backwards. Cars are doing anything they can to scramble to get off the street. I see a public school bus now that's making a turn to get off of this main street in downtown Baghdad. From the sounds of it, what battle is going on some far distance away from where we are.
John, let me just ask you in terms...
It's pretty calm right now. What I'll do is, Susan, see if you have any other questions for me or the rest of our CNN team members. It's Mark Biello, our cameraman, has just walked in the room. Mark, can you see anything from either side of the hotel?
No, on the east side of the building, there was some sporadic anti-aircraft fired, but nothing as of now. It just seemed like some sporadic shooting and maybe only 1 or 2 fighters, and may not even have been a full attack.
Yeah, right. So Charles Jaco, of course, saw some planes taking off about 30 or 40 minutes ago from his position in Saudi Arabia, and that perked up our ears and made us a little bit more interested in listening out the windows here. It appears it's quiet again, Susan. Let me come over so that I can hear what you have to say. Go ahead.
John, apparently my colleague Patrick Greenlaw has a question for you. Patrick, go ahead.
John, I guess you've just answered the question then. In terms of intensity, even though you can't see because of the fog, in terms of intensity, this was nothing like what you went through last night then at the beginning stages.
I think it's probably exactly like the beginning stages of what we saw last night. I was catching the only hour's sleep I had in the past 2.5 days. At the beginning stages of this, Bernie Shaw was in here. He was about to interview, I believe, former Secretary of State George Shultz when all hell began to break loose here in Baghdad. Right now, it's calm again. I don't know what to say to you except to say that it's interesting to still see people on the streets. In fact, I saw a couple of people in, Arabic headdresses walking down the sidewalk. I can still see them. They're not even running. They're just walking slowly down the sidewalk to some location. My colleague, Bernie Shaw, a man who was trying to get a little sleep, has just come running in the door.
I'll tell you, I'm afraid to go to sleep because, one, as a journalist, I don't want to miss anything, and two, I don't like trying to go to sleep where bombs are falling.
No kidding.
A couple bombs, obviously, were just dropped way off in the distance. And as I ran down the hall, John, I'll tell you what I think this is. I think this is an effort to test, to see what is still viable, what has survived, which batteries have survived. You'll notice that it came very quickly, and it ended very quickly.
And there's not a lot of anti-aircraft fire. There wasn't a lot of anti-aircraft fire during this during this raid. I'll tell you this, Bernie, while you were away, Charles Jaco in Saudi Arabia detected a group of F-15, I believe Charles said they were F-15s, taking off from his position. He could see them take off. Didn't know where they were going. It is possible that those planes which left about 40 minutes ago might be the very planes creating this increased level of tension in our broadcast booth.
I would surmise that those planes that took off, if they indeed were headed this way, they certainly have arrived at the destination. I'm sure you've reported on this, but isn't this eerie? I keep using that word, but that is a word that really goes to the heart of some of the impressions we were getting from here in Baghdad. To see traffic moving along, and I watched for the cars to pull off. Yeah. They did not pull off to the side of the road. When that wave went by, the wave of bombing went by, these cars, some of them sped up and they tried to get away.
I saw a couple of taxi cabs in reverse going about 30 miles an hour right down in front of our
Did you see that one cab here that backed up?
No,
he backed up, and he backed up on the curb and was frantically turning around to get out of the way. But I just ran down the hall and wanted to make sure we were all right, and you're okay, and I'm going to walk back down the hall. And
lie down, Bernie. You're going to have to be standing here while I'm lying down in 4 or 6 hours. So just, you won't be able to sleep, but at least,
my problem is I can't turn off my mind, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try to find the key.
Good luck, Bernie Shaw. Susan Patrick, we're still here. Other questions for us?
Thank you, Bernie. John, have you heard anything from Iraqi officials? The last word you had, apparently officially, was word that Saddam Hussein was planning to go on Iraqi television. I assume that that is apparently canceled. But have Iraqi officials told you anything?
Well, we've heard a little bit from Iraqi officials, Susan. The phones were safe and sound. And we'll be back to you with another updated report. But now we know at least that President Saddam Hussein, who we heard might be making a television address a couple of hours ago, has just arrived to record that address. So it might still be available to us, perhaps even live sometime in the next few hours, if Iraqi television can send it out. So we'll stay in touch. John Holloman, CNN Live in Baghdad.
John, just to reiterate, can you please clarify, Saddam Hussein was actually seen this morning, it is now 10 a.m. in Baghdad, in person?
That's right. Our man Nick Robertson just told you, Susan, he was at the television station 1 hour ago when Saddam Hussein walked in. Did the president acknowledge you were there, Nick? Did you wave at him? Did he wave back or anything?
The president did not see me. I kept myself very much inconspicuous.
Sometimes the best policy in these matters. But Susan, yes, our man, CNN's Nick Robertson, has seen the president of Iraq in the past 60 minutes at the TV station, so we know where he is.
Nick, what can you tell us about how Saddam Hussein looked? Did he look tired? Did he look tense? Did he look angry? Did he look frustrated? What can you tell us, perhaps speculate about the psychological strain on the man?
Very hard to say indeed. I would probably not describe him with any of the words that you used there. Maybe resolute, and maybe there was a determination in his step, and the people with him were walking a pace to keep up with him.
I'm sure the viewers all over the world are very, very interested in your sighting of President Saddam Hussein, because you may be the only Westerner who has seen him in the past 2 or 3 days, Nick. Susan, if you have more questions, we're here.
Thank you very much, John. Right now, we are going back to Patrick Greenlaw, but thank you to you and all of our colleagues in CNN Baghdad. Patrick.
Obviously, a tremendous amount of developments in the past 8 hours since the initial invasion. CNN's Mark Leff has this report on the chronology of how things happened.
First word from 2 of the 4 countries whose planes were involved in the overnight attack on Iraq and Kuwait is that all aircraft and their crews have returned to their bases unharmed. After destroying much of Iraq's Air Force, many of its elite Republican Guard troops, and, according to the U.S. Defense Department, much of Iraq's war-making capacity. The attack on military targets in Baghdad and throughout Iraq and Kuwait involved several waves of aircraft and dozens of cruise missiles.
I saw Tomahawk cruise missiles leave the U.S. destroyer Paul F. Foster at exactly 1:37 local time. That's 3 hours ahead of British time. They curled in an arc over the ship and then steadied and headed northwest for Iraq. And by 2 o'clock our time, 20 minutes later, 40 more cruise missiles had been launched.
Less than 3 hours after the sound of anti-aircraft fire first echoed over Baghdad, President Bush told a television audience the world could wait no longer. Targets. Elsewhere in the Middle East, Jordan has put its armed forces on alert after state-run Amman Radio reported the attack on what it called sisterly Iraq. In Israel, which Iraq had promised would be a target of retaliation, the government ordered a state of alert, but said the Iraqi threat to Israel is diminishing. 5 hours after the airstrikes began, Baghdad Radio broadcast a speech by President Saddam Hussein, in which he said the dawn of victory nears as what he called this great showdown begins. Mark Leff, CNN, reporting.
CNN's chief satellite engineer here in Baghdad. He's been to the television station in an effort to get some videotape fed out to you. It can't be fed at the moment. Nick, you say you discovered some damage from last night's bombing, huh?
Yes, there was damage. There was some damage in the street, some broken glass and some small amounts of rubble, but there was one significant point of damage I noticed on a building I would best describe as a communications type of building with many dishes on the roof, microwave type dishes, maybe a post office communications type building. There was a sizable hole in one side of that, and one lower corner of the structure at the back had been sizably damaged.
And Nick also reports that about 60 minutes ago, he saw Iraqi President Saddam Hussein at the television station, apparently about to prepare a videotape message for the people of Iraq. At this point, we don't believe Iraqi television is on the air, but we're trying to determine that for sure. Yeah, and it appears that it's not on the air. That's the latest from Baghdad. We'll have more for you when we can get back to you.
John, about the fog, you still have it. Bring us up to date on conditions right now at a little after 10 in the morning.
Well, the fog's beginning to lift, Patrick, and in fact, I can go to the window and describe some things a little bit further away than I was able to before. Let's see. I see many more soldiers on the street than I've seen in the past. A revolving restaurant, Nick, tell me.
No, I see a revolving...
Oh, yes, I see a radar, a radar installation that appears that is an anti-aircraft installation here. That we've seen the anti-aircraft guns at this location in the past, but we've never seen a spinning radar outfit. So there is we've been talking with Wolf at the Pentagon and Charles Jaco in Saudi Arabia about spotting radars from the Iraqis. There appears to be one very close to our location here, which is now in operation. And as we look around the city, we can still see very little sign of any damage except what Nick reported, and also some broken glass, probably from the concussion of some of the bombs in several other locations around the city of Baghdad. As yet, we haven't been able to get our cameras out on the street. Iraqi officials won't let us take any pictures of the damage so far. We're hoping that as the day progresses, we'll be able to get you some new pictures and also to send you the pictures from last night, the dramatic footage of this air raid on Baghdad. Patrick?
We'll be checking back in with John Holloman as needed. Let's go to Jonathan Mann.
Patrick, we're going now to Charles Bierbauer at the White House. Charles?
Jonathan, attention has certainly shifted away from the White House in the course of the evening, and of course, being the middle of the night here now, President Bush, we would imagine, is resting well. We do understand that Secretary of State Baker, Secretary of Defense Cheney are expected at the White House for breakfast, at least with the National Security Advisor, possibly with the President, too. There are no public events on the President's schedule for this now Thursday here. The last word, I guess it's Wednesday, I've lost track of time. The last word that we really got from the President is his words from the Oval Office.
Almost immediately. It's taken us this long to rig up a portable satellite telephone. About 500 people, staff and guests, were in the Rashid Hotel when the raid first hit Baghdad. Security men herded all of us into massive shelters 3 floors underground. The hotel was undamaged. Nobody was injured. We haven't heard anything from the Iraqi government at this point. The radio station we did pick up was playing the Iraqi national anthem. There was a short announcement to say that the mother of all battles had begun, attributed to Saddam Hussein. When dawn came, there was thin white smoke, just like a thin fog sweeping across the city. It's only just now clearing. It smells like a burning chemical of some kind. There is no way of verifying the claims that Iraqi missile batteries along the western border have all been destroyed. or that the Iraqi Air Force has been destroyed. But the central area downtown does not appear to have been hit at all. This is Tom Asbell, NBC News, Baghdad.
That rocked us a little bit here in downtown Baghdad. We're not sure precisely where they came from. I was about to start looking at some videotape of the initial attack last night, and I couldn't tell whether I was hearing the videotape or the live until my cameraman, Mark Viello, said, nope, this is not Memorex. And we look out now and look for signs of damage. I'm looking at the downtown Baghdad airport, a small airport. Don't see any sign of damage there. I hear some bells ringing someplace in the distance. I don't see any smoke anywhere as I look through the horizon. I'm looking at old downtown Baghdad. I see a huge water tank that's still intact. As I continue to look, I see two minarets of a mosque way off in the distance, perhaps 4 or 5 miles away. And I continue to see birds flying over the city. I can't tell you what just happened. I know it shook us up again as we have been accepting and feeling some incoming fire for some time here. At this point, Patrick, I can't tell you anything. I'm looking up in the sky to see if I see signs of jet planes flying over, and I just do not. I think since we can't tell you any more, we'll let you go back to what you were doing before, and we'll just keep our eyes and ears peeled here in Baghdad.
We can stay with you beyond the two explosions that you heard. Give us an idea of what the hotel is like. You're still on the 14th floor all night long.
I believe the direction it's coming from is the west. But at any rate, compared to what we experienced last night, this is small potatoes. Last night there was barrage after barrage after barrage, wave after wave of planes, and the skies were brightly lighted with anti-aircraft fire from the Iraqis, which, from all we could tell, did not have a lot of effect. I'm hearing now the sound of what I believe are big bombs falling. I don't see anything from these bombs, but I can just hear it. It's a rumbling. Patrick, you'll remember I covered the earthquake in San Francisco for us back a couple of Octobers ago, and it's that sort of feeling that I'm getting here. I'm going to let you stick the microphone out the window, see if you can hear what I hear. It sounds like distant thunder. I'm thankful to be able to tell you that this attack that is occurring right now in Baghdad is much further away from the central city than what we heard last night. And I'm going to continue to peer out the window through the white clouds with some breaks so that you can see blue, just to see if I can see some sort of sign of some kind of aircraft. And I do not. I'll just tell you that. And just as quickly as the rumbling started, it seems to have stopped here in Baghdad. Patrick, it just ended just this instant.
John, do we know any more? Have you been able to make any kind of investigation of the building that you had described earlier with the white smoke pouring out of it? Any speculation or any firm ideas on what that was?
Well, we thought perhaps it might be a smoke generator of some kind. We didn't know. One Iraqi official said he thought it might be some trash burning rather than anything intentional to fill up the air, but who were continuing to keep Baghdad under attack.
John, yeah, I guess we're coming up on, well, roughly 8 hours now since the first attack, 10:30, well, yeah, it's coming up on 10:30 a.m. right now in Baghdad, but around 8 hours ago, the first strike hit the city, and following it at that time, you and Bernie and Peter Arnett had a couple of encounters with security people in the hotel. I'm wondering if you can had any other encounters that I may have missed. Can you describe any of these people, the attitude that they had